The rain hammered against the windshield of Elena's rescue vehicle as she navigated the treacherous mountain road. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the dense Washington forest in stark flashes of white. As the head of the Mount Baker search and rescue team, Dr. Elena Martinez had seen her share of storms, but this one felt different. The air itself seemed to crackle with an energy she'd never encountered before. "Base, this is Martinez," she spoke into her radio, fighting to be heard over the thunderous downpour. "Any update on those unusual readings?" Static crackled before dispatch responded. "Negative, Document Weather Service is still trying to make sense of it. But we've got multiple reports of some kind of light show in Sector 7, about 3 miles up from your position." Elena checked her GPS. Sector 7 was deep in the wilderness, far from any hiking trails or camping sites. "Any missing persons reports?" "None filed, but with these readings. Command wants eyes on the ground." "Copy that." Elena clicked off the radio and gripped the steering wheel tighter. After 15 years of search and rescue operations, she'd developed an instinct for trouble. Tonight, every nerve in her body screamed that something was very wrong. The vehicle's headlights caught something metallic glinting through the trees. Elena slowed, peering through the rain-streaked windshield. A faint blue glow pulsed in the darkness, unlike anything she'd ever seen. It reminded her of the bioluminescent algae she'd studied during her marine biology days, but this was different, colder, more artificial. She pulled over and grabbed her gear, medical kit, emergency beacon, satellite phone, and the new thermal imaging camera the department had finally sprung for. The rain soaked through her weather-resistant jacket within seconds as she stepped out into the storm. "Base, I'm investigating an unusual light source in Sector 7. Going on foot from here." She clicked on her headlamp and started into the forest, her boots sinking into the mud with each step. The blue glow grew stronger as she approached, casting ethereal shadows through the ancient cedars. The air temperature dropped dramatically, her breath visible in wispy clouds despite it being a summer night. Her thermal camera showed nothing but static, its screen flickering with interference. Then she heard it, a soft moan carried on the wind, barely audible over the storm. Elena quickened her pace, following the sound until she reached a small clearing. What she saw there stopped her in her tracks. A woman lay crumpled at the base of a massive cedar tree, her body curled into a fetal position. She wore what looked like a form-fitting silver suit that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Her hair was stark white, though she appeared young, perhaps in her late 20s. Elena approached cautiously, her medical training taking over. "Ma'am? Can you hear me? I'm Dr. Martinez with Search and Rescue." The woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises of such a pale blue they were almost transparent. She tried to speak but only managed a weak cough. Elena knelt beside her, pulling out her medical kit. "Try not to move. I'm going to check you for injuries." Her fingers found a steady pulse, though it seemed unusually rapid. The woman's skin was ice-cold to the touch, yet she wasn't shivering, a concerning sign. "They're coming," the woman whispered, her accent unlike anything Elena had ever heard. "You have to hide me." "Who's coming? Were you in an accident?" Elena ran her hands along the woman's limbs, checking for broken bones. The silver suit felt strange under her fingers, almost fluid-like despite its metallic appearance. "My name. Lyra." The woman's eyes focused on Elena with surprising intensity. "Please. Trust no one else." Before Elena could respond, a deafening crack of thunder shook the forest. The blue glow surrounding them pulsed brightly, and Elena's equipment went dead, her headlamp, radio, and phone all silent at once. "We have to move," Lyra struggled to sit up, panic evident in her voice. "They can track the residual energy." "You're injured," Elena protested, trying to keep her patient still. "We need to wait for backup." "No time," Lyra grabbed Elena's arm with surprising strength. Please. I'll explain everything, but if they find me here, both our worlds are in danger. Elena had always prided herself on her rational, scientific mind. Everything about this situation defied logic: the strange lights, the equipment failures, this woman's impossible appearance. Yet something in Lyra's eyes spoke to a deeper truth, awakening an instinct Elena didn't know she possessed. A new sound cut through the storm, a low, pulsing hum that made Elena's teeth ache. Lyra's face went even paler. "They're here," she whispered. Elena made her decision. She helped Lyra to her feet, supporting most of her weight. "My vehicle's about half a mile back. Can you make it?" Lyra nodded weakly. They began moving through the forest as fast as they could manage, the strange humming growing louder behind them. Elena's mind raced with questions, but survival took precedence. Whatever was happening, her duty was clear: protect and save lives first, ask questions later. The rain continued to pour as they stumbled through the darkness. Twice, Lyra nearly collapsed, but Elena's strong arms kept her upright. The mysterious woman seemed to grow lighter as they walked, as if gravity's hold on her was weakening. They were within sight of Elena's vehicle when the forest behind them erupted with light. A beam of intense blue-white energy carved through the trees, missing them by meters and leaving a scorched path in its wake. "Get down." Lyra pulled Elena behind a fallen log just as another beam sliced through the space where they'd been standing. The air crackled with ozone, and Elena's hair stood on end. "What the hell was that?" Elena gasped, her professional composure finally cracking. "Hunters," Lyra's voice was grim. "They won't stop until they find me." She turned to Elena, her strange eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to involve anyone else in this." Another energy beam lit up the forest, closer this time. Elena could hear heavy footsteps approaching, accompanied by that bone-rattling hum. "My car's right there," Elena whispered. "If we make a run for it, they'll disable any Earth technology," Lyra warned. "But I might have enough strength for one more jump." She pulled something from a hidden pocket in her suit, a small crystal that pulsed with the same blue light they'd seen earlier. "Dr. Martinez." "Elena," Lyra's voice was urgent. "I'm about to show you something impossible. You'll have questions, many questions, and I swear I'll answer them all. But right now, I need to know, do you trust me?" Elena looked into those strange eyes, remembering her oath as a rescue worker, to protect and save lives, whatever the cost. In 15 years, she'd never left anyone behind. She wasn't about to start now. "Yes," Elena said firmly. "I trust you." Lyra's hand found hers, skin impossibly cold yet somehow comforting. The crystal between them began to glow brighter, its light enveloping them both. "Close your eyes," Lyra whispered. The world disappeared in a flash of blue light, and Elena Martinez's life changed forever. Behind them, dark figures emerged from the forest, their featureless helmets scanning the area where their quarry had been moments before. Only the rain remained, washing away all evidence of the extraordinary encounter that had just taken place in this quiet corner of the Pacific Northwest. In the command center miles away, radar operators stared in confusion at their screens, watching as every trace of the strange atmospheric disturbance simply vanished, leaving behind only questions and the lingering sense that something momentous had just occurred, something that would change the course of human history. Elena's first sensation was cold, a bone-deep chill that made her previous experience in mountain storms feel like a summer breeze. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse, moonlight streaming through broken windows. Lyra lay beside her, the crystal in her hand now dark and lifeless. What just happened?" Elena's medical training kicked in even as her mind reeled, and she quickly checked Lyra's vital signs. The mysterious woman's pulse was even weaker than before. "Quantum displacement," Lyra murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "Crude by our standards, but it was all I could manage in my condition. She tried to sit up but collapsed back with a grimace of pain. Elena shrugged off her jacket and wrapped it around Lyra's shoulders. We're somewhere in Seattle, I think. I recognize the skyline. Through the warehouse windows, she could see the Space Needle illuminated against the night sky. The storm that had been raging in the forest was absent here, replaced by a clear, star-filled sky. Your city's lights. Lyra's strange eyes fixed on the urban landscape beyond the windows. They hide the stars. On my world, we built our cities to enhance their light, not diminish it. Elena sat back on her heels, forcing herself to take slow, steady breaths. Your world, she repeated. You're really not from Earth, are you? Before Lyra could answer, the warehouse door burst open. Elena instinctively moved to shield her patient, but Lyra gripped her arm. Wait, she whispered. I know him. A tall figure entered, wearing what appeared to be a perfectly normal business suit, but something about his movement seemed just slightly wrong, as if he wasn't quite used to Earth's gravity. His features were classically handsome, but his eyes held the same otherworldly quality as Lyra's. Princess Astrea, he bowed slightly. You've led us on quite a chase. Elena turned to Lyra, or Princess Astrea, in surprise, but the other woman's face had transformed from vulnerable to regal in an instant. Commander Talon, she said coolly. I should have known my father would send his most ruthless hunter to fetch me. Your father, our beloved emperor, is concerned for your safety. Talon's smile didn't reach his eyes. These primitives, he glanced dismissively at Elena, cannot protect you from what's coming. These primitives have shown more humanity in the past hour than I've seen in a century of court politics. Lyra's voice was steel. Elena saved my life while your hunters tried to end it. Protocol dictates. Protocol? Lyra attempted to stand, and Elena quickly moved to support her. Was it protocol that made my father suppress the truth about Earth? That made him hide the existence of an entire civilization? Elena's mind spun as she tried to process what she was hearing. Wait, she interrupted, earning a sharp look from Talon. You've known about Earth? For how long? For millennia. Lyra's voice softened as she turned to Elena. My people, we call ourselves the Astrani, we've watched Earth since your earliest civilizations. We saw your potential, your creativity, your resilience. But we also saw your capacity for destruction, your wars, your environmental damage. So you just watched? Elena felt a mix of awe and indignation. We did more than watch, Talon said. We protected you. From others who would have conquered or destroyed your world. From technologies you weren't ready for. From truths that would have shattered your societies. And who gave you the right to make those decisions for us? Elena demanded. The same right that lets your governments keep secrets from their citizens, Talon countered. The right of the advanced to protect the developing. Enough. Lyra's voice cracked like lightning. I didn't come to Earth to debate policy. I came because I discovered something terrible, something that threatens both our worlds. She swayed slightly, and Elena tightened her grip on her arm. Talon took a step forward, his facade of civility cracking. Princess, you're speaking of matters beyond your authority. I'm speaking of the convergence, Lyra said, and Talon went very still. Yes, Commander. I know about the temporal anomaly. I know what my father plans to do about it. And I know it will destroy Earth in the process. Elena looked between them, sensing the weight of unspoken dangers. What's the convergence? Something that should not be discussed here. Talon's hand moved to his jacket, and Elena caught a glimpse of something that definitely wasn't a normal Earth weapon. If you harm her, Lyra's voice was quiet but intense, you'll have to explain to my father why you killed the one person who can prevent the catastrophe his scientists predicted. Talon froze. What are you talking about? The prophecy. Lyra met Elena's confused gaze. The one that speaks of a bridge between worlds, formed when one who heals the body meets one who heals the stars. That's just an old myth, Talon scoffed, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Is it? Lyra held up her wrist, pulling back the sleeve of her suit to reveal an intricate pattern of swirling marks that seemed to shift and move in the moonlight. These appeared the moment Elena touched me. The mark of convergence, Commander. The very thing your scientists have been searching for. Elena stared at the marks, remembering the strange sensation she'd felt when she first found Lyra in the forest. She pushed up her own sleeve and gasped. The same patterns were etched on her skin, glowing faintly in the darkness. Impossible, Talon whispered. No, Lyra's voice held a hint of triumph. Inevitable. The prophecy speaks of choices, Commander. Of paths that fork and futures that hang in the balance. Elena's choice to save me, despite all logic and reason, has set something in motion that neither your weapons nor my father's edicts can stop. The warehouse fell silent except for the distant sound of city traffic. Elena felt the weight of destiny settling around her shoulders, but strangely, it didn't feel as heavy as she'd expected. Perhaps because she'd already made the most important choice, to trust her instincts and help someone in need, regardless of where they came from. If what you say is true, Talon finally spoke, his voice carefully neutral, then protocol requires me to take you both into protective custody. No, Elena surprised herself by speaking. Whatever's happening, whatever this convergence is, we're not going to figure it out locked away in some secret facility. You said Earth people have potential, prove you believe that by trusting us to help solve this. Lyra smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her otherworldly features into something beautifully human. Well said, Elena Martinez. Commander? She fixed Talon with an imperious stare. Will you help us, or will you stand in the way of destiny? Before he could answer, a low rumble shook the warehouse. Through the windows, Elena saw something massive moving across the face of the moon, something that shouldn't be there. The Harbinger, Lyra breathed. They're here earlier than I predicted. Who's here? Elena asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. The reason my father wanted to keep Earth hidden, Lyra's voice was grim. The ones who've been searching for your world for millennia. And now, thanks to the convergence, they've finally found it. Talon's composure cracked completely. We need to move. Now. There are safe houses. No, Lyra interrupted. We need answers, not hiding places. Elena, she turned to the doctor, her strange eyes intense. I know I've already asked too much, but I need your help once more. There's a place we need to go, a place where science and myth intersect. Will you come with me? Elena looked at the marks on her wrist, then at the shadow passing over the moon. In the space of a few hours, her world had expanded beyond anything she'd imagined possible. Yet somehow, she felt more certain of her path than ever before. Lead the way, she said. As they slipped out of the warehouse into the Seattle night, Elena couldn't help but think that while she'd set out to rescue someone else, she might have ended up rescuing herself from a life of ordinary expectations. Above them, stars twinkled through the city's light pollution, and for the first time, Elena wondered which one Lyra called home. She also wondered if Earth would still be here long enough for her to find out. The streets of Seattle blurred past as Elena's borrowed SUV sped through the pre-dawn darkness. In the passenger seat, Lyra, Princess Astrea of a world Elena could barely imagine, worked with what looked like liquid light between her fingers, manipulating streams of data in the air. Take the next right, Lyra instructed, her voice tense. The mountain facility should be able to shield us from their scanners. You still haven't told me what we're running from, Elena said, taking the turn sharply. In the rearview mirror, she caught glimpses of black vehicles following at a discreet distance, Commander Talon's people, presumably. Those ships up there, the ones that keep appearing and disappearing through the clouds, who are they? Lyra's hands stilled, the light dissipating. We call them the Void Hunters. They're scavengers, in a way. They search for developing civilizations at crucial technological tipping points. Then they harvest them. Harvest? Elena's grip tightened on the steering wheel. They take what they consider valuable: resources, technology, people with potential. Then they eliminate any trace that the civilization ever existed. Lyra's voice was hollow. They've done it thousands of times across the galaxy. My people have stopped them where we could, but they're relentless. And now, because of the convergence, they've finally found Earth. A flash of light in the sky made Elena swerve. Something massive passed overhead, its shadow momentarily turning night into complete darkness. When light returned, the road ahead was blocked by what looked like a military checkpoint. Federal agents, Elena muttered, slowing down. Your friend Talon's people? No, Lyra's eyes narrowed. Earth authorities. They must have detected the Void Hunters' ships. Stop the car. What? We can't. Trust me. Lyra placed her hand over Elena's on the steering wheel. That same strange electricity Elena had felt in the forest coursed through her again, and the marks on their wrists glowed in unison. Elena brought the car to a stop. Armed agents approached from both sides, their weapons raised. But before they reached the vehicle, the air itself seemed to ripple. The agents froze mid-step, caught in what looked like waves of heat distortion. A temporal bubble, Lyra explained, her voice strained. It won't last long. Drive through them, they won't be harmed. Elena pressed the accelerator, fighting down her instinct to stop as they passed through the line of frozen agents. It felt like driving through thick syrup for a moment, then they were clear. In the rearview mirror, she saw the agents unfreeze, looking around in confusion. That was incredible, Elena breathed. But I thought you said your powers were limited here? They were. They are. Lyra slumped in her seat, exhausted. But something's changing. The connection between us, its amplifying abilities I barely knew I had. The prophecy spoke of this, of powers awakened when our worlds truly meet. A series of explosions lit up the sky behind them. Elena caught glimpses of impossible battles being fought above the clouds, sleek silver ships she assumed were Astrani clashing with darker, more organic-looking vessels that had to belong to the Void Hunters. The mountain facility, Elena said, trying to focus on their immediate goal. What's there? A nexus point. A place where the barrier between our worlds is naturally thin. My people built a research station there centuries ago, disguised as an abandoned mining operation. If we can reach it, we might find a way to stop the convergence before. She was cut off by a deafening roar. A Void Hunter ship descended directly in front of them, its surface rippling like oil on water. Elena slammed on the brakes, but the road beneath them had already begun to disintegrate, breaking apart into floating segments that rose toward the alien vessel. Hold on to me. Lyra shouted. The marks on their wrists flared brilliantly as she pulled Elena close. The world shifted, and suddenly they were falling through space, no, through something else, something between spaces. They landed hard on a forest trail, the SUV nowhere in sight. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Elena helped Lyra to her feet, noting how the alien woman felt more solid now, more present in Earth's reality. You're adapting to our gravity, she observed. And you're adapting to my energy, Lyra touched the glowing marks on Elena's wrist. The convergence is accelerating. We don't have much time. A branch snapped behind them. They turned to find Commander Talon emerging from the trees, his perfect suit now dirty and torn. Princess, he said, his voice rough. The Void Hunters have begun landing troops. Your father's ships can't hold them back much longer. Then help us, Lyra challenged. The facility is compromised, Talon interrupted. They found it hours ago. Whatever you hope to discover there is lost. Elena felt Lyra's despair, an actual physical sensation through their growing connection. But there was something else too, a certainty forming in her mind, as if she were remembering something she'd never actually learned. No, Elena said. There's another way. Both Lyra and Talon turned to her in surprise. I've been seeing it in my dreams since we met, but I thought they were just stress reactions. A cave system, deep under the mountain. Symbols carved into the walls that look like the marks on our wrists. Lyra's eyes widened. The ancient vault? But that's just a myth, a story told to children about the first contact between our worlds. Many myths have their basis in truth, Princess, Talon said thoughtfully. And if the doctor is seeing it? Another explosion rocked the mountain, closer this time. Through the trees, Elena could see strange figures moving, too tall, too fluid in their movements to be human. We need to decide now, Elena said. I can find this cave. I don't know how I know, but I do. Whatever's happening between us, whatever this convergence is, maybe it's showing us the path for a reason. Lyra took Elena's hand, their marks pulsing in sync. Lead the way. Talon drew what looked like a ceremonial sword from his ruined jacket, but when he activated it, the blade hummed with energy. I'll hold them off as long as I can. Princess. Dr. Martinez, the fate of both our worlds rests with you now. Elena wanted to say something profound, to acknowledge the sacrifice he was offering to make. But there was no time. Already, the strange figures were getting closer, their movements becoming clearer, like liquid metal given purpose and malice. She led Lyra into the depths of the forest, following a map that existed only in her mind. Behind them, the sounds of battle erupted as Talon engaged the first wave of void hunters. Above, the sky continued to fill with impossible ships locked in combat. But ahead there was something calling to them both. Something ancient and powerful, waiting to be rediscovered. Elena felt it pulling at her very atoms, singing in harmony with the energy that flowed between her and Lyra. They were running out of time, but for the first time since this began, Elena felt real hope. Whatever awaited them in the depths of the mountain, she knew with absolute certainty that she and Lyra were meant to find it together. The marks on their wrists blazed like captured stars as they ran deeper into the forest, towards destiny. The cave mouth gaped before them like a wound in the mountain's face. Elena's flashlight beam seemed to be swallowed by the darkness, but the marks on her wrist glowed brighter, casting an ethereal blue light that danced across the ancient rock walls. It's exactly like in my dreams, Elena whispered. Above them, the sounds of battle had grown distant, muffled by layers of stone and earth. The symbols, they're everywhere. Lyra traced her fingers along one of the wall carvings, a spiral pattern that matched the marks they both bore. This is impossible, her voice filled with wonder. These are Astrani star maps from before our modern age. They shouldn't exist on Earth. They moved deeper into the cave system, following the pull of something neither could quite explain. The tunnel walls were covered in more symbols, some clearly Astrani, others resembling ancient Earth languages Elena half-remembered from archaeology lectures in college. Your people didn't just watch us, did they? Elena asked, understanding dawning. You were here. Actually here, walking among us. Lyra nodded slowly. According to our oldest records, there was a time when our worlds were closer. Not physically, but dimensionally. The barriers between realities were thinner. Then something happened, a catastrophe that forced our ancestors to seal the connection. The first convergence, Elena realized. She stopped at a larger chamber, where the cave walls opened up into a vast circular space. In the center stood a crystalline structure that resembled a tree made of light, its branches reaching toward the cavern ceiling. And this is where they did it. The crystal tree pulsed with energy as they approached, responding to their presence. Images began to form in the air around them, holographic records preserved for millennia, waiting to be discovered. It's a quantum archive, Lyra breathed. She reached out to touch one of the floating images, and a voice filled the chamber, ancient yet perfectly clear, speaking in a language that Elena somehow understood. "We thought we could maintain the bridge between worlds," the voice said. "We believed our two species could evolve together, learning from each other, growing stronger through unity. But we didn't account for the attention it would draw." The images shifted, showing vast dark ships, earlier versions of the Void Hunters' vessels, descending on ancient Earth cities. Scenes of destruction played out before them, followed by images of Astrani ships arriving to drive the invaders back. "We sealed the dimensional barriers to protect both worlds," the voice continued. "But we knew the separation couldn't last forever. The convergence is not just an event, it is an inevitable realignment of realities. It cannot be stopped, only guided. And so we left this record, and the means to ensure that when the worlds meet again, they would have champions to guide them." "The prophecy," Lyra whispered. "The marks, our connection, it wasn't random. Your instinct to save me, my decision to trust you. We were chosen," Elena finished. "Or rather, our choices made us the chosen ones." She laughed softly at how impossible it all sounded. A doctor and a princess, meant to save two worlds. The crystal tree's light intensified, and new images formed, complex diagrams showing the current convergence, the gradual weakening of dimensional barriers that had allowed the Void Hunters to finally detect Earth. "My father knew," Lyra said, her voice tight with emotion. "That's why he became so obsessed with Earth, why he strengthened our policy of non-interference. He thought if he could keep Earth hidden long enough, he could find a way to prevent the convergence entirely. But he was wrong." Elena studied the diagrams with growing understanding. "You can't stop two realities from seeking their natural balance. The more he tried to keep them separate, the more violent the eventual reunion would be." A tremor shook the cave, sending dust and small rocks raining down. The battle above was getting closer. "The Void Hunters aren't just here to harvest Earth," Lyra said, her eyes wide with revelation. "They want to use the convergence itself, to harness its power when the dimensional barriers collapse. That kind of energy could give them weapons beyond imagination." Elena moved closer to the crystal tree, drawn by an instinct she didn't quite understand. "Then we don't stop the convergence. We control it. Guide it, like the ancient said." She held out her hand, the marks on her wrist pulsing in sync with the tree's light. "Together." Lyra took her hand without hesitation. The moment their fingers intertwined, the crystal tree erupted with energy. Knowledge flooded into their minds, not just information, but understanding that went bone deep. They saw what needed to be done, the price that would have to be paid. "Elena," Lyra's voice was soft, vulnerable in a way it hadn't been since they met. "If we do this, nothing will ever be the same. For either of our worlds." "I know." Elena turned to face her, seeing past the alien features to the soul beneath, a soul that somehow felt as familiar as her own. "But maybe that's exactly what both our worlds need." Another explosion rocked the cave, closer this time. They could hear the sound of weapons fire, of running feet. Their pursuers had found them. "Your father tried to keep our worlds apart to protect us," Elena said. "But love is stronger than fear. Trust is stronger than suspicion." She squeezed Lyra's hand. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Lyra's response was not in words. She pulled Elena closer and kissed her, a kiss that felt like starlight and morning dew, like the meeting of two worlds that had been separate for far too long. The marks on their wrists blazed like captured suns. When they parted, both of them were glowing with power drawn from the crystal tree. The ancient knowledge hummed through their veins, showing them exactly what needed to be done. "Ready?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Lyra smiled, that same beautiful smile that had first made Elena's heart skip a beat in the forest. Ready. Together, they turned to face the cave entrance just as the first void hunters appeared, their liquid metal forms writhing in the crystal tree's light. But Elena and Lyra weren't afraid anymore. They had found something stronger than fear, something that could bridge not just worlds, but hearts. The real question was whether the universe was ready for what would happen next. The power of the ancient crystal tree flowed through Elena and Lyra as they faced the advancing void hunters. The liquid metal beings hesitated at the threshold of the chamber, their featureless forms rippling with what might have been uncertainty. "You've chased us across galaxies," Lyra's voice echoed with otherworldly authority. "Destroyed countless civilizations. But you've never encountered anything like this, have you?" The nearest hunter shifted, its surface reflecting the crystal tree's light in mesmerizing patterns. When it spoke, its voice was like mercury sliding across glass. "The convergence cannot be controlled. The energy released when realities merge will tear both your worlds apart. Unless you harvest that energy first," Elena finished. "Use it to make yourselves even stronger." "We offer survival," the hunter's form rippled. "Submit to harvesting now, and portions of both your civilizations will be preserved in our collective." Elena felt Lyra's hand tighten in hers. Through their connection, she sensed not just Lyra's thoughts, but the very essence of her being, the weight of royal responsibility, the loneliness of keeping secrets, and beneath it all, a love for both their worlds that matched Elena's own. "You're wrong about the convergence," Elena said. "It's not a weapon or a disaster. It's a reunion." The crystal tree's light intensified as they raised their joined hands. The marks on their wrists blazed, and the ancient knowledge they'd absorbed showed them exactly what to do. Energy coursed through them both, and the cave walls themselves began to glow with activated symbols. The void hunters surged forward, but it was too late. Reality itself seemed to flex around them. Through their enhanced perception, Elena and Lyra could see the dimensional barriers thinning, but instead of the violent collapse the hunters had anticipated, the barriers began to merge smoothly, like two streams joining into a river. "No!" The lead hunter's form became jagged, threatening. "The energy is ours too." A blast of pure light interrupted it as Commander Talon burst into the chamber, his energy sword blazing. "My apologies for the delay, Princess," he said, positioning himself between them and the hunters. "Your father's forces have landed. They're engaging the hunters on the surface." "My father?" Lyra's concentration didn't waver, but Elena felt her surprise. "He came himself?" "Once we realized what was happening, what you'd discovered." Talon deflected a hunter's attack with his sword. "Let's just say his perspective on Earth has evolved rapidly." Through their connection, Elena and Lyra could sense the changes spreading outward from the cave. The convergence was accelerating, but under their guidance, it wasn't the catastrophe everyone had feared. Instead, it was more like an awakening. Above them, the battle was transforming. The Void Hunters' ships, designed to harvest the energy of a violent collision between realities, found themselves unable to process the gentler merger taking place. One by one, they began to retreat, their dark forms vanishing into the upper atmosphere. The hunters in the cave chamber writhed in obvious distress. "This changes nothing," their leader hissed. "We will return when." "No," Lyra's voice was calm but final. "You won't. Because after today, Earth and Astra will stand together. And together, we'll be ready for you." Elena felt the truth of those words in her bones. Through their shared vision, she could see the changes already beginning, Earth technologies merging with Astrani innovations, human creativity combining with alien wisdom. Not a violent conquest or a careful manipulation, but a true partnership between worlds. The hunters made one final rush toward them, but the crystal tree's energy had grown too strong. Its light filled the chamber completely, and when it faded, their liquid metal forms had vanished. In the sudden quiet, Elena became aware of new voices approaching, human and Astrani together. Through the cave entrance, she saw figures approaching, Commander Talon, some of her colleagues from search and rescue, and a tall, regal-looking man who could only be Lyra's father. But before they arrived, Elena turned to Lyra. "So, what happens now?" Lyra smiled, and Elena felt her heart skip just as it had that first night in the forest. "Now, my dear doctor, we build something new. Together." She glanced at their still glowing marks. "After all, we're literally bound by destiny." "Destiny?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "I thought it was just my irresistible charm and medical expertise." Lyra laughed, a sound like starlight made audible. "That too." Her expression grew more serious. "It won't be easy, you know. Guiding two worlds through this merger, helping them understand each other." "Good thing you have a professional communicator on your team," Elena said. "Though I have to warn you, my alien princess rescue skills might be a bit rusty after this first time." "I think you did quite well," Lyra pulled her closer. "For a primitive." Their kiss was interrupted by the arrival of the others. Elena heard gasps of wonder as humans saw the crystal tree for the first time, watched as Astrani scientists began examining the ancient symbols with obvious excitement. Lyra's father approached them slowly, his expression unreadable. "Daughter," he said formally, then surprised them both by pulling Lyra into an embrace. "You were right. About everything." "Not everything," Lyra said, keeping hold of Elena's hand. "I thought I was running away from home. Instead, I was finding a way to bring our homes together." The Emperor turned to Elena, his strange eyes so much like his daughter's. "Dr. Martinez. It seems we owe you a debt that can never be repaid." "Actually," Elena said, thinking of all the possibilities she could see unfolding before them, "I think we're just getting started on repaying each other." The crystal tree's light had softened to a gentle glow, illuminating humans and Astrani as they began to work together, already sharing knowledge and ideas. Outside, Elena could hear the sounds of more ships landing, not as invaders this time, but as allies. The convergence was complete, but in many ways, their real journey was just beginning. As Elena looked at Lyra, she saw all the adventures still ahead of them, diplomatic missions between worlds, scientific discoveries that would revolutionize both societies, and quiet moments together beneath alien stars. "Ready for another impossible rescue?" Lyra whispered. Elena squeezed her hand, feeling the marks on their wrists pulse in response. "With you? Always." Around them, their two worlds continued to merge, not with the violence their enemies had hoped for, but with the gentle strength of two streams joining to form something newer and stronger than either had been alone. And at the heart of it all stood a doctor and a princess, their love bridging the gap between stars and species, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in any universe is simply the courage to reach out and trust another heart. The crystal tree's light flickered one last time, as if in blessing, and the future, bright with possibility, stretched out before them like an endless field of stars.